Alright, so we're back once again, and today we're going to be talking about the ship that has been removed from the game, but still seems to plague the game, and it's none other than the Thunder. Now, usually I don't talk about ships because I have about as much experience on ships and how they work and how they function, how they're balanced in the game, as, I don't know, like an oil rigger has about fixing a car, I guess. That's the best analogy I can come up with. It's not great, but I suppose it'll do. And so, when I talk about things that are broken in the game, I tend to err on the side of caution just because I'm not that good at the game. Better than average, but not good at the game. And so, it has to take something exceptional, like that 10k volley off the HE, to really make me say that something is a little bit problematic, shall we say. And this is probably more indicative of a bigger overall trend within the game. Of course, I'll be commenting on some of the decisions I make in this game, which kind of accentuate the Thunder's strengths. But yeah, so that's going to be the topic for today. It's going to be the Thunder and basically how broken it is. Now, when we think of the Thunder, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that it's a HE spamming monster. And HE spamming in and of itself is probably a bigger problem within the game, and you can clearly see it's not the fact that, you know, getting citadels on AP with battleships can be annoying to say the least, but a much more frustrating problem is the slow tick of the inevitable damage that's coming from HE. And I think this just serves to extenuate the problem that is things like the Thunder, the Conqueror, ships that spam HE like Smolensk even, before it was kind of nerfed. Now, if we were going to compare this to an AP monster, I think the farthest back example I can really think of is the Kremlin when it was first released, and that ship was horrifically overpowered, but seems to be in a much better place right now. But even then, the whole rigmarole around how OP it wasn't really as bad as the current game state with HE ships. Now, I'm not saying again that HE spamming ships are completely brainless. No, they're about 99% brainless. Prime example being right there, we do AK salvo and get 2 fires for barely aiming near the ship. No, that's not the issue. The issue is it's all too easy to rank up high damage numbers and think that you've actually done well in the game. Now, this game's going to be maybe a prime example. Sometimes I do some decent things, other times I feel like I'm just basically a sideshow in the game. As we obviously start pushing down the right hand flank, the enemy team seems to have, for some reason, abandoned it, which tends to be happening quite often, which is usually why I stick to ranked. Thank God it's a lot more common nowadays, ranked. But again, we're going to extenuate this, and battleships play a little bit differently to DDs. If you see my previous video, obviously there's a flowchart for DDs, goes from caps, enemy DDs, damage. With battleships, it's a, let's say a variation of that, but still it's fairly similar. In terms of battleships, the way I like to think of it is that generally, obviously, a pretty important goal is getting control over the caps, but also you want to protect your DDs at all costs. And so, in battleships, generally there isn't all that much threat to you as there would be in a DD. So the way you want to alter your way of thinking is not so much in how do I keep myself alive, but in how I deal damage and how I prioritize how I deal damage. And so the flowchart kind of goes in the form of, okay, if you spot a DD, you're always shooting that DD first, almost no matter how far away it is. Now, obviously, if a Marceau was like 27 kilometers away and you're in a Yamato, chances are you're not going to hit that. So, yeah, take this with a grain of salt. But generally, you want to prioritize DDs first, then cruisers, and then enemy battleships. That's generally the flowchart for battleships. Again, it's open to change, it's open to interpretations. If you see a flat broadside Thunder sailing straight ahead of you, and wait, there's like a Marceau like bobbing over and back, and you're probably not confident on hitting it, then maybe it's a better shot to take on the Thunder. But again, this is all very subjective. but the general rule does apply. Now we're up to about 81,000 damage, and truth be told, apart from killing that Yoshino, we haven't actually done all that much. Sure, we've set a couple of fires, 8 to be example, which is kind of broken, and we have done a significant amount of damage, but none of that is really sticky damage. And when I say sticky damage, I don't mean that's disgusting. When I say sticky damage, I basically mean damage that's actually going to stick, that can't be healed back up. And maybe the Conqueror is the biggest culprit of this. It's like, okay, sure, we hit the ship, we got 3 fires. We do like, what, 50k? But if that ship's going to heal up all that damage and get away, then your actual impact on the game has been pretty much minimal. Actually negative, because in the time you were firing at that HE at an enemy ship and not dealing any damage, you could have been doing much more productive things with your time. And so try not to get caught into the idea that just because you're setting fires and you're getting fire damage and you're getting HE damage, that you're actually being effective in the game. And this is something anyone can fall into. Now, that being said, we do see an opening on the right hand flank, and we are going to extend that opening. Generally you don't want to push on the Thunder because it is very, very squishy, but in this situation we are facing a Frederick Grossa and a Thunder, and so although the Thunder can hit me, it's going to be a 1v1, and well, I'm not even going to entertain the fact that that FDG has a possibility of hitting me, because its dispersion is about as good as, well, Italian BBs. We've all seen that clip of Flamu. Anyways, we're going to keep extending this flank, and hopefully, at this point, I'm already starting to think of what I'm going to do differently. We do get the kill on the FDG, and now immediately I'm like, okay, this Thunder is running away from me, and the carrier's right there. Do I want to waste my the little bit of time I have left chasing down the Thunder for the rest of the game? Well, probably not. That wouldn't be the best use of my time. So immediately spotting, we have control of A, we have control of B, but the other side of the flank or the other side of the map is a little bit weak. And so what do? We immediately turn. We abandon chasing the Thunder, we abandon chasing the carrier, because it's not productive in order to win the game. In order to win the game, the only thing that really matters is control over the caps and helping our team if they're getting absolutely stumped. And so with that, we decide to turn back into B and help our team. Now if you take a look on the minimap, you will see the Zau, the Bismarck, the Vermont are all unspotted, and they are all on that flank. And this is something I really want to touch on, because Thunder players tend to be much more susceptible to something like this happening than probably any other player in the game. And it's the syndrome known as winning harder. I don't know how many times I've mentioned this, but one more probably won't hurt. And so what win harder is what I would have done is if I had kept pushing. If I had kept pushing that scenario, kept chasing that Thunder down that line of thinking, eventually it would have gotten to the point where the Lexington would have turned his attention to me, that Vermont probably would have turned his attention to me, and the Bismarck probably would have turned his attention to me, and maybe the Zau. But as we're about to find out, the Zau is currently occupying B cap. And in that, I would have got melted extremely quickly, because no matter what anyone says, when 3 ships start aiming at you, you start getting flustered, and you start getting very, very complacent. And what that leads to is missed shots, mispositioning, and a detonated ship, which is something you don't really want to have happen to you. That being said though, with us turning in, we can still use the island ahead of us as a little bit of cover, and we can still churn out damage on the Thunder, on the enemy Thunder. It's not a all or nothing type thing. But again, we are protecting ourselves from taking too much damage from things like the Zau and the Bismarck, which is always important. Now we're going to speed this up a little bit because, well, this gets to a little bit of a boring section. That was nice though, that was real nice. Nice, and we get the kill on the Thunder, which is pretty much ideal with the last gasp shot. Now at this point we have 175k, which would be a pretty decent game in the Thunder, all things considered, even if I died right now, which doesn't seem to be the case. If we look at the score on top, you can see that we do have a little bit of a disadvantage. We don't have any DDs left, which puts us at a pretty significant spotting disadvantage, but not massive. Now at this point again, priorities still exist. We still focus the cruisers, battleships if we have a really good shot, but they're not the priority. Now overlapping the priority of shooting, we have the priority of caps. Caps above all else, and then the flowchart again. DDs, cruisers, battleships. Now the Zao gets a little bit overzealous here and decides he wants to take a pop at me, which is confusing. Even more so because he turns flat broadside. Again, very questionable gameplay. But we end up doing 13k, which is pretty nice to say the least. Now, the thing about the Thunder is that you'll notice that I'm shooting AP, and I'm switching between both HE and AP significantly, or a significant amount of times in the game. And this isn't by accident. This ship isn't the Conqueror. And there's a reason why people tend to sleep on the Conqueror, even though it is probably one of the most broken ships in the game. It's because the AP on the Thunder is just so goddamn potent. There's really nothing else to say in this ship. It is probably the strongest ship in the game, I'd like to say. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say, as we get the high caliber achievement. But generally, yeah, there's not many ships that can keep up with the Thunder. Now that being said, we do kill a Bismarck, and the only thing really left to do is take control of BCAP and basically secure the win at this point. The Zao isn't going to be a threat to me, because if he shows his face I'm going to slap him into the middle of next week with AP. And well, the Vermont we can pretty much deal with too. It's slow, it's American, it's fat. Sorry, that's a lot of stereotypes. But yeah, we can deal with the Vermont with no issue at all. And so, the Zao decides to shoot, very idiotically, and we decide to take advantage of him. And we do land another fire. Now another thing is that we do have 12 fires set, and we have 82 shells landed. That's a significant fire chance. This game is special in a lot of regards, not least on the mega fires that's been set. Now again, right here, I did think about shooting the carrier, but when an American BB shows you this much broadside, you'd be a fool not to take shots at him. And so we do. Now we do a decent amount of damage. We get about 19, oh no, not 19, maybe 11k or something, which is not too shabby at all. And again, with the Vermont not being shown, we take shots at the carrier. Now if it's a choice between the Vermont and the carrier, we always shoot, well I for example shoot the carrier, not the carrier, oh my god, we shoot the battleship, because well, I can't one-shot the carrier. What I can do though is dissuade a battleship from, you know, being more of a threat. And when the carrier is basically out of range or out of reasonable probability of being hit, we hit the Vermont for 22k and we pick up the Confederate, which is always nice to have. I swear to god, after this game I got so many flags, I don't even know what to do with them. But at this point, there's not much more to be said. We just go into Cap B and then effectively the game ends. Well, we do have the Curvers pushing that other flank. He is going to be taking C, and well, the Vermont's in a bit of a no-win situation at this point. Now, overall this game, you know, you're saying that it's a pretty good game, you didn't do all that many mistakes, but I would tend to disagree generally. I think there's loads of things I probably could have done different. I think I could have turned into the center of the map maybe a bit sooner, and in that way helped out my team a lot more quickly. And it wouldn't have been so relatively close actually at the mid-game point. I think that's something I could have improved upon. And generally, when I was playing this game, I was fairly indecisive. I was always double guessing myself, which led to decisions that were just a little bit late, which could have resulted in a lot more damage or a lot more, you know, potential good outcomes. I type in chat here that I need 19k for 300k. I think my highest damage ever is, I think 303,000 on this very ship. So beating that record would have been nice, but yeah, if it's not meant to happen, it's not meant to happen. Now, I don't know what this guy was doing or where he was hiding the entire game, but he seems to just pop up in random locations, and well, unfortunately I only had AP loaded at the time, so I couldn't really one-shot him, but we do get 4 overpens, we do 5k damage, which is acceptable. But with that, there's not much more to be said. We get 287,000 damage, we get 4 kills, we don't really get the Kraken, I don't think. Sadly, that's taken from us. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.